Glad to have you along this time out. We are joined as always by Greg Engert, beer director for the Neighborhood Restaurant Group, a James Beard Award nominee. The group includes Red Apron, 2 locations, Union Market in the district, as well as in Merrifield and Columbia Firehouse in Old Town. Greg, always good to see you.
You too, bud.
What is on tap this week?
Well, this week we're going back to the Bruery from Placentia, California, in Orange County, Southern California. It's fun with the Bruery because it seems like, 2 or 3 times a year we get a very small drop of some really delicious new thing from the Bruery because they're always working on crazy new things out there. And even still, I should mention, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's lots of bottlings that they do that you don't see outside of their home region. So if you're ever in Southern California, make sure to go to the Bruery because you'll get even more exotic things that we can get on the East Coast. But in any event, a few years ago, Patrick Rue, who's the founder and owner of the Bruery, made a very important decision, and one that was really ahead of its time at this point, and it was a huge decision. They'd started out as a Belgian-inspired brewery, making wonderful beers, and after a while, Patrick decided if he was going to expand, he'd rather spend the time, the energy, and the money on expanding his barrel storage and going more and more towards oak barrel-aged beers, be they sour, as is the case with Sour on the Rye, or non-sour, rather than to spend money on stainless steel fermentation, bright tanks, things, other equipment that would allow him to create a lot more of the non-barreled beers that he was making. Beers like Orchard White, which was his delicious wit beer. He cut that. That might have been his best-selling beer. He just said, "We're not going to brew that anymore. We're going to stick to brewing lots of different things and smaller batches of them and lots of barrel aging." So nowadays that sounds like I could see that happening. Obviously, Blue Jacket is going to be doing a lot of smaller batches of interesting rotational things, lots of barrel aging and such. But for a production brewery of pretty good size to do this a few years back was really cool. So
I mean, the analogy is probably a bad one, but it's like a car maker saying we're going to stop making our most popular car.
Right, exactly. But the funny thing is that I think the issue is for brewers now is that they might have beers that are pretty popular and that they like a lot, but those beers make it very difficult for them to experiment and keep kind of pushing the envelope and being creative just because of the time and tank space that those beers take up. And luckily for brewers in the U.S. now, there is a huge groundswell of support for the exotic, the esoteric, and the small batch. So yes, it is kind of like saying, we're going to get rid of this car that's selling best, but we're pretty sure that these other 15 cars will do better and sell more with that one out of the way, and we'd rather work on these cars than that one.
So, I mean, they're not to get too far away from talking about this specific beer, but they're he's stockpiling more. He's still making the same amount, but he's putting more of it away.
And it's more expensive. Exactly. So you're still brewing lots and lots of beer, but rather than brewing a beer, fermenting it, conditioning it, and releasing it within, say, 3 to 4 weeks or something from brew house to bottling, he still does that with a number of his beers, too, I should mention. Like the Mischief is their Belgian Strong Blonde Ale that's delicious, no barrel aging to it, comes out pretty consistently. You see a good amount of Rugbrod, which is his rye brown ale, similarly. But most of what he's doing is just what you said, Brennan. It's brewing batches of beer and then finding a home for them in a certain barrel, maybe giving it a different treatment, and then when it's ready, then it gets bottled, kegged, and sent out. So kind of some risk involved because your money up front takes a long time to get back on the investment. And, it's always more profitable to make something and sell it rather than to make it and wait and sell it. But that's what winemakers always do.
Okay.
So that's what we have here. This is called Sour on the Rye. It is 7.8% beer, kind of amberish in hue. It's brewed with 40% rye malt. Rye will give you body. Less of its sugars get fermented by the yeast than, say, barley malts would, but also a great kind of spicy character to it. Then the beer, after primary fermentation in stainless steel tanks, goes into oak barrels that previously held red wine for over a year. And it's not like it's 10 months or 12 months. It says over a year because most brewers who are making funky kind of wild beers, and this does incorporate wild yeast and positive bacteria, will tell you that you have to listen to your beer. You can't get on a production schedule with it because things behave differently. Barrels behave differently, so there's always blending involved to make sure you get a kind of a standard flavor for the batch of the beer. But you don't just start out saying, this is going to take, most don't start out saying, 3 months and we're good to go. You're kind of tasting it over time and seeing where it goes and then creating a fantastic blend at the end.
This may not be an absolute, but if I can smell a beer from there, I'm pretty confident.
It's pungent.
It's going to be
most likely intense.
Good. Most likely good.
I really, really do love the nose on this. It's fantastic. It's malt driven. Obviously, there's some funk there. There's some sour fruit qualities. I get lots of like tangerine and orange, and then the barrel, a little bit of like sweet oak notes as well. But it's pretty sour on the palate. Right?
I don't think it's the most sour I've had, but it's more sour than the one we had 3 or 4 weeks ago that I really liked. But that's good. I mean,
it's good.
I wouldn't send that
balanced.
back.
Yeah, it's tasting really great. And then way back in the finish, you get tannic qualities. You get that wood note coming through. A little bit of the wine comes out. It's excellent.
And we have the bottle here, but this is draft.
This is draft, actually. Yeah, so we poured it off draft. Yeah.
Beautiful color too.
And in bottle, what's great is that it's bottle conditioned, so it's still working its way. It's been fermenting in the bottle. So another one to lay down. Sour beers are phenomenal to lay down because what will happen with this one over time is the acidity will actually mellow. So it won't be quite as tart. The tannins will jump out a little bit more, which will be really cool. Some of the fruit may dissipate, but more of the malt character and wood character is going to come through. It'd be really interesting to see how this goes.
What would you pair this with?
I'm a purist. I get nervous with. I love beers that are intensely flavored, but I get really nervous with them around food. This just, even though it's not insanely sour, it's there. So I'm going to think more about this with, cheeses and things like that, just to kind of stick with the way that the acid here can dig into rich cheeses. Think goat's milk cheeses across the board, funkier cheeses. I actually think this would do pretty well. The funk from the nose is great with like a funky cheese like Grayson or something. But I also think this might even do really well with some blue cheese. Kind of clean it up a little bit.
For some reason, it popped into my head, and maybe I'm just mixed up, and once I tried it, the tastes wouldn't mix, but pork tenderloin. I don't know why. I don't know.
It could. It could.
I wouldn't know until we tried something.
Yeah, we'd have to have it. And actually, that's you're thinking about like if you braise pork or something, you get that nice.
What's on it.
Yeah. But I think as far as what's on it would be important. Too much sweetness when it hits sour makes the sour come out a little bit more. It'll dry it out a little bit more. So it would be interesting to see how it would do with some things like that. And honestly, this could stand up to some, a thick ribeye or something could handle this acidity. And even though it's not darker in color, I think it could be pretty cool with that as well.
I mean, I haven't had a lot of the Bruery's beers. This is our second or third of theirs, or at least we've had some of theirs of collaborations. And I mean, I see them on the shelf at the store, and I don't know. There's something about their name that to me just imparts. I want to try that.
It's great packaging too. I mean, it's large format bottles, and also I should mention, the Bruery is, I think they were the third or fourth brewery with whom Blue Jacket collaborated.
Right. When
we first got started collaborating way back when, and that was for the delicious Belgian strong dark ale with plums called Washington OC. Which is really delicious as well.
Now, did they do one? I know you did one. Blue Jacket did one with Cigar City. Did the Bruery do one with Cigar City?
Yes, they did.
Okay,
they did, actually.
Maybe we highlighted that one
We're starting to,
months ago.
We've done this a lot now.
We're walking down Beer of the Week memory lane.
Starting to wonder if we've done a beer before. They did really cool beers with Cigar City that they released in 3 different ways with different wood chip agings. Some with cedar and some with white oak and things like that. So yeah, they do really cool collaborations quite a bit. So they make great beer.
California, a great place to visit for beer drinking. I've always said I would never own a motorhome, but the more I think about it, as far as beer tourism across the country, it might work.
It might.
If you've got a question for Greg, send us an email. The address is beeroftheweek@WTOP.com. Greg, thank you as always.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Everyone, please always do drink responsibly, and be sure to bring your thirst next time for another Beer of the Week.